The Lost World, written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Text adaptation by Susan Kingsley, illustrated by Anders Westerberg. Oxford University Press, and it belongs to the Dominoes series, Stage 2. Series editors Bill Bowler and Sue Parmenter. Chapter 1. Where are these great adventures? How beautiful she was, her large, soft eyes, her long dark hair, her sweet smile. Gladys Hungerton was made for love. We were friends, good friends, but nothing more. We sat silently by the window in her father's house, and Gladys seemed so beautiful but so far away. Tonight, I decided, tonight I would ask her. Suddenly, she turned to me and said, I have a feeling that you're going to ask me to marry you, Ned. Please don't. How did you know? I asked, very surprised. Women always know, she replied. But don't you think that things are nicer as they are? We are good friends. We can talk so openly and so easily together. But I want more than that, Gladys. I want to hold you in my arms. Oh, Gladys, why can't you love me? Because I love another man, she replied. Gladys saw the surprise on my face. Oh, I've never met him. She laughed and explained, he's just an idea in my head. Tell me about him, I said. Well, he possibly has your face. But what? I asked. Tell me, Gladys, just tell me what you want. I can change. He is a harder man than you. He's a man who does brave things and has strange adventures. He's a man who can look at death in the face and is not afraid. But we can't all have adventures, I said. And where are these great adventures? I've never found one. They are all around us, but it is only the great men who see them. And I know if I marry, I want to marry a famous man. And why not? I said suddenly and jumped to my feet. Yes, I'll do something great in the world. I will. And when I've done it, Gladys put a soft hand over my mouth. Don't say another word. You're already half an hour late for the office. One day, when you've won your place in the world, we'll talk about it again. That was how it all began. As I waited for my bus in the dark, rainy London streets, something was burning inside me. I was 23, an unimportant young reporter on the Daily Gazette newspaper, but I felt inside me the hot fire of first love. Tonight, I was sure I would find something that would change my life. I would find a great thing to do, a brave adventure somewhere in the world, and I would win my Gladys's love. So, that cold November evening, I arrived at the office of the Gazette with my head full of ideas. Mr. McAdle, the news editor, was at his desk. I always liked old McAdle, and I hoped that he liked me. I heard that you're doing very well, Mr. Malone, he said in his kind Scottish voice. You have written some very good pieces for us. Thank you, I answered. Now, how can I help you? Sir, I have something to ask you. Do you think that you could possibly send me somewhere with a lot of adventure and danger? I'll try to write something good for the Gazette. I really will. Were you thinking of anywhere special? Not really, but somewhere very difficult. I want something really hard. Oh dear me, Mr. Malone. "That's very brave of you," replied Mr. McArdle. "Do you really want to lose your life so young?" "No, I want to find out what my life really means." "Mr. Malone, the days of young reporters going on dangerous adventures are past, I'm afraid. These days, editors only give jobs like that to famous reporters," he said. But then a sudden smile came to his face. "Wait a minute, I have an idea. Why don't you go and see Professor Challenger?" Professor. Professor is an important teacher at an university. "Professor Challenger, the famous zoologist," was my surprised reply. Word. Zoologist. Zoologist is a person who studies animals. "Didn't he break the arm of that reporter from the Times?" "Yes, but I'm hoping that you'll have better luck. And you said that you wanted danger, didn't you? Here are some notes for you to begin with." He gave me a paper and I read it quickly. "But sir," I said to McArdle, putting the paper in my pocket, "I don't understand. Why do I need to talk to this man? What has he done?" McArdle's round, red face looked up from his newspaper. "He spent a year alone in a place somewhere in South America. No one knows where it is. He came back to London last year and he said one or two things about his travels. But then people started asking questions and he stopped talking so freely. Either something wonderful happened there or the man's a liar. Most people think he's a liar, so now he hits anybody who asks him questions and he throws reporters downstairs. That's your man, Mr. Malone. Go and see what you think of him." And that was the end of the conversation. I went out and for a long time I looked into the brown, cloudy waters of the river Thames, looking for ideas. Then suddenly I knew what to do. I went at once to see Tarp Henry, a scientist and an old friend of mine. "Challenger," said Henry. "He was the man who came back from South America with that impossible story. He said that he had discovered some strange animals there. There were even some photographs, but nobody believes that they are real." Tarp Henry showed me some of Challenger's books and I opened the largest one. After a long time, I found a few words which I could clearly understand. I wrote them on a paper and began my letter. "Dear Professor Challenger, I am a young zoologist who has always been greatly interested in your works." "You liar!" laughed Henry. I went on writing, asking if the great professor would kindly agree to see me on Wednesday to talk about some of the ideas in his books. "He's a dangerous man," said Henry, reading my letter, "but lucky for you, I don't think that he'll answer this." My friend was wrong. At 11 o'clock that Wednesday morning, I was knocking on the front door of Challenger's fine house with a letter from the professor in my hand. With that, we come to the end of our chapter 1. Chapter 2. It's the biggest thing in the world. When I stood face to face with the professor at his home in the Enmore Park, I could not believe what I saw. He had the most enormous head that I had ever seen, a very big body and great hairy hands. A word, enormous, means very big. His face was an angry red color and his great beard was blue-black. He sat and looked at me with eyes of a very deep grey. "Well," he said at last. I tried to talk like a scientist, but the professor did not believe me for a minute. You dirty little reporter! Did you really think that you could be as clever as the great G.E. Challenger? Challenger jumped to his feet, and I was surprised to see that he was only a short man. Then he attacked me. His great body was on top of me, and then I was on top of him, and my mouth was full of his beard. Our bodies went flying out of the room, and we suddenly found ourselves in the street. A policeman stood beside us with a little notebook in his hand. "What's all this, then?" he asked, looking at the professor. "You were in trouble for the same thing last month, weren't you?" He opened his book and started to write notes in it. "No, please don't," I said. "This time I began it. I'm afraid he didn't mean to hurt me." The policeman stopped writing and told the crowd of people in the street to go away. The professor looked at me with a small smile in his deep grey eyes. "Come in, I'm not finished with you yet." A little afraid, I followed him into the house. He went back into his room, where he showed me a comfortable chair. "Now listen carefully," he began. "I usually have no time for people from the newspaper, but your words to that policeman showed me that you are, perhaps, a little better than the rest of them. That is why I brought you back. Now, you know that I made a journey to South America 2 years ago. Very few white people have visited the small rivers which run into the great Amazon River. One night I was in a village deep in the forest. The Indians there took me to see a very ill white man in one of their homes. A word, Indian. Indian means a person who lived in America before white people arrived. Continuing. When I arrived, he was already dead. Beside him lay a bag. When I opened it, I saw the name Maple White and an address in America. I also found something else. It was this book of his drawings. Look at it closely." He stopped, took an old, dirty drawing book from his desk and gave it to me. There were drawings of Indians and a picture of a white man with the words Jimmy Culver on the boat below it. The other drawings were of animals and birds. "I see nothing unusual here," I said, and I turned the pages. The next drawing interested me more. It showed some very high, dark red cliffs. They lay across the page like a great red wall with green trees all along the top. One great tall rock stood alone next to the cliffs. "Now look at the last page," said the professor, smiling. I turned the page and nearly screamed. I was looking at a wild, strange animal. It had a small head, short legs, and an enormous blue-gray body, perhaps 9 meters long. "Now, look at this," he said, and he showed me a bone. It was about 15 centimeters long with some dry skin at one end. I found it in the American's bag. "The same bone in a man's body is like this," he went on, and he showed me a bone about 1 centimeter long. So you can see it came from a very large animal, and the skin on the end tells you that the bone is not very old. "Well, what do you think? What is it?" "I am afraid that I have no idea," I replied. "Then I'll tell you, young man. This bone belongs to a dinosaur." Word. Dinosaur meaning a big animal that lived about millions of years ago. Continuing. The drawing is of a dinosaur too. Scientists think that they all died millions of years ago, but I can tell you that some dinosaurs are still alive today. So what do you say now? "I am deeply interested," I said. Next, the professor showed me a large, very dark photograph. I looked at it closely. I could see an enormous wall of cliffs. Beside them stood a tall, single rock with a great tree on top. I think it's the same place as the drawing, I said. It is. I found things from Maplewhite's camp there. Now look at that tree. Can you see something there? A large bird, I guess, I said. Not a bird, replied Challenger. Would you like to see a piece of its wing? The professor opened a box and took out a long bone with some grey skin on it. Then he opened a book on his desk and showed me a picture of a strange flying animal. This is a picture of the pterodactyl, he said. Word pterodactyl, meaning a flying animal that lived millions of years ago. Continuing. This is a picture of the pterodactyl, he said, and that is a drawing of the bones in a pterodactyl's wing. I looked at the book and at the bone, and I was sure it was all true. Professor, this is just the biggest thing in the world. You're a great scientist who has found a lost world. The professor sat back in his chair with a great, warm smile on his face. And did you see any more living things there, sir? I asked. No, I heard many strange sounds from the top of the cliffs, but I could not find a way to climb up there. But how did the animals get there? They have been there for a long time, replied Challenger. The rest of the world changed and all the dinosaurs died, but life on those cliffs has stayed the same for millions of years. Professor, this is wonderful news. You must tell the world about it, I said. I've tried, but nobody believed me. Stupid people, replied the professor. But now tonight I'll try again. At 8:30 tonight there is a meeting at the Zoological Institute. They have asked me to thank the speaker, Mr. Waldron, at the end of the meeting. While I'm doing that, I'll say one or two interesting things, and perhaps people will want to learn more. If I tell my story quietly and carefully, perhaps they'll listen to me. Will you come? I'd like to have somebody in the room who is on my side, even somebody who knows as little as you do. With a large, kind smile, he gave me a ticket from his desk. You will not put a word of this in your newspaper. Do you understand? Now goodbye. You have already taken too much of my important time today. I'll see you at 8:30. With that, we come to the end of chapter 2. You can find chapter 3 and 4 in the next video of the playlist. Thank you. Bye-bye.